It's been about a year since the release of Bloodlines, and a lot of us have been wondering, is there more Dune Imperium coming? And if so, what's it going to be? When is it coming? We want more of this game that we love. Well, Direwolf has been dropping little hints over the last few months about what's coming up for Dune Imperium, and I thought it would be fun to go through everything we know so far about the future of this game that we love. The first news came about during the Dice Tower's Summer Spectacular. They had this big long stream where a lot of different game companies were announcing their latest projects, and Direwolf was there to promote their latest game, Lightning Train. But they did also have this to say about Dune Imperium. This is from June 4th, 2025. Let's take a look. So on the left there, we can see Scott Martins, who is the president of Direwolf, aka Scarlatch. And over on the right there, we can see Paul Dennen, the man himself, the designer of Dune Imperium, as well as Clank, Lightning Train, and many other games. And here is what they had to say.
For all of the Dune Imperium fans out there, next week we'll be releasing the digital version of the Immortality expansion. And this is new for us. We're going to have brand new digital first content coming out this year for Dune Imperium. We're still working through this process, but we intend for most of this to then be released in physical form.
Okay, so yes, this came out just before Immortality was released, and that was very exciting news for those of us who love Dune Imperium Digital. But then, wait a minute, what? Let me go through this again here. Let's go through, okay, Immortality, wonderful, we love Immortality, but hold on a second here.
This is new for us. We're going to have brand new digital first content.
Digital first content. So far, everything we've seen in Dune Imperium Digital has been something that has already existed in the physical game that then got added to Dune Imperium. So first it was Dune Imperium, the classic game. About a year later, we got Rise of Ix. About a year later, we got Immortality. And then we've been thinking the next thing we'll get someday is Uprising. Digital first content.
Coming out this year for...
Coming out this year? Hold on a second. I don't even remember noticing this when this announcement first came out. This year, there's not that much time left in this year. As I'm recording this video, it's the end of November. So this was very exciting news here. Let's just listen to the end of it again.
Dune Imperium. We're still working through this process, but we intend for most of this to then be released in physical form.
We intend for most of this to then be released in physical form. So this is interesting. Something's going to come out for Dune Imperium Digital that's going to be new. And then later, most of it is intended to be released in physical form. So after this came out, you know, it was talked about a little bit. And my thought on it was that it would be something fairly minimal. I thought maybe we would get like, at best, maybe some new leaders that fit into the game, which would be a wonderful thing to get. Or even I wondered if it might be something like cosmetic, like maybe just alternate art for leaders or alternate art for cards that they were going to put in the digital game first. And most of it to be released in physical made me think, okay, maybe there's going to be some like, you know, challenge modes or something that won't go to physical. To be honest, like I didn't think too much about this because I kind of figured it would have to be something small, but there's no details here. Either way, very exciting. Digital first content. I love that as a primarily digital player of the game. All right, so that's what came out June 4th, 2025 from the Dice Tower. Now, next up was a Reddit AMA done by Paul Dennen. He came to Reddit on June 29th, 2025, again, to promote Lightning Train, but also was open to talking about a lot of other things. So I took some of the kind of key posts from that AMA, but it was quite an interesting discussion, you know, to hear from this wonderful game designer talking about his thought process and what he's interested in and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely encourage you to check out that thread. I'll put a link in the video here if you just want to read some of Paul Dennen's thoughts about various things. But as it pertains to new Dune content, here was the first one that caught my eye. So a user asks, what's next for Dune Imperium? And Maricon1 here, that is Paul Dennen. He says, it's possible that you'll see the next expansion first in digital and then physical, but nothing is certain. I like to think at Direwolf, we're experimenters and it'll be done when it's done and we're proud of it. So let's look at this. It's possible that you'll see the next expansion first in digital. A few things here. First, the word expansion is quite interesting because from that Dice Tower video, they didn't use the word expansion. They just said digital first content, which is what made me think it might be something fairly minimal. But here, expansion is used, but also the word possible is used. Either way, the next expansion is mentioned. So that means, okay, there is another expansion coming for Dune in some form or another. But nothing is certain. And I love that philosophy. It'll be done when it's done, and we're proud of it. So maybe walking back a little bit, the sort of this year part of the Dice Tower video. So this AMA came out a few weeks after that Dice Tower video did. And so nothing in the Reddit here indicates a timeline at all, except for this, it'll be done when it's done. Okay, next Reddit post here. A user asked about new content. Is it true that the next physical content update will first be available online for fine tuning before being released in physical form? Now that's an interesting idea, right? Because that could be one of the advantages of releasing something in digital first, is you have a huge player base to test, do a lot of testing on things and maybe tweak some numbers around before you go ahead and add something to the digital game. But that wasn't mentioned in any of the prior stuff. So this is kind of theorizing. What does Paul Dennen say? Regarding new content, we did announce during a Dice Tower event that we're exploring new digital first content, and we're looking forward to the new movie like everyone else. Okay, so we're exploring new digital first content. Again, very vague, really nothing new there. And we're looking forward to the new movie like everyone else. Now, I'll say I did cut this comment down a little bit, but there was nothing in there talking about the new Dune movie. This is something that just came out of the blue here from Paul Dennen. So perhaps a little hint that the new stuff might be related to Dune Messiah, the third, or maybe Dune Part 3. I'm not sure what they're calling the movie, but the movie based on the second Dune book, Dune Messiah, the third Dune movie. Anyway, that would make sense because so far the Dune Imperium games have been tied to the movies. The original Dune Imperium came out around the same time as the first Dune movie, and it's all themed around the visual design of the movie, the actors, and everything about it. It looks like the movie. And then Dune Imperium Uprising was kind of based around Dune Part 2 a little bit. Characters from that movie are in Dune Uprising, and thematically it sort of fits in there. So it would stand to reason that the next game might be based on the next Dune movie, and there's a hint to that right here from Paul Dennen. I don't know the guy, but anyway. All right, let's go to the next one. This is an interesting question. Will Immortality of Rise of Ix or Rise of Ix be supported in future content for Dune Imperium, or have we seen the last of any content interacting with dreadnoughts or research? And I think this is a great question as well, because that's something that I have often wondered, like, could we get more stuff to tie into specimens, or could we get leaders for Immortality maybe? Paul Dennen says, we generally don't like to assume that a player has all the expansions when putting out a new one. So if we include a card that calls out Dreadnought, what does a player do if they don't have Rise of Ix? Are they going to feel disappointed, even if we included it with best intention to support other players? There's some trickiness there. Having said that, I wouldn't be opposed to supporting those things more in the future if there is a path of positivity. So yeah, this is an interesting question. It's not really answered forcefully one way or the other than to say it's kind of maybe awkward. And he says, I wouldn't be opposed to supporting those things more in the future. It doesn't sound to me like that's what we're getting next based on this, but maybe someday. I mean, I will note that Uprising does include contracts that mix with Rise of Ix, so it seems like theoretically possible. Okay, next post. Basically here, this user is asking, will we get an expansion that just adds kind of more content without adding more rules and complexity? Which I think is a pretty interesting question, because that is one of the downsides of adding expansions. You add Rise of Ix, and it's not just, oh, we get more Imperium cards, but it's also we change the game and we change the rules and we add a bunch of complexity, which does make it harder to teach, which is what this person is kind of focused on. And Paul Dennen says, it might be that I generally design what gets me excited, and more stuff isn't that exciting to me. I guess I wonder about the context. If you want to bust out a game that's easy to teach, why include expansions? Okay, so that was also something I thought based on that first Dice Tower video, is maybe they'll just add like a couple of new cards, which I'm not going to complain if they do, but just kind of like a few more things, kind of an update. And it seems like that's not something that Paul Dennen gets very excited about. And so it seems like that's probably not going to happen. All right, so that's it from the Reddit AMA as far as what is coming next for Dune Imperium. And so what did we learn here? Well, there's a hint about maybe related to the movie, and we're exploring the idea of digital first, but nothing is certain. Okay. After this, things were pretty quiet for a while, as far as I can tell, but there was a recent update on October 26th. There was the World Series of Board Game competition, and Paul Dennen was invited to commentate a match of Dune Imperium Uprising, which was the semi-final. So he was asked a few questions after the match. Let's take a look here. We can see Paul Dennen there on the left and Chris George from the World Series of Board Gaming on the right.
Announcements. I'm putting you on the spot.
Dune announcements. Well, we've been cooking up some more content in the studio for Dune Imperium, and what's interesting about this next expansion is that digital players are going to be able to play it first.
Oh,
because we're going to launch it to digital, and it's going to help us kind of balance and
cool.
finalize it, because it's kind of so complex that the extra data that we're going to get from the community will help balance the expansion.
Aha. Wait for it.
And eventually we'll have Uprising too. It doesn't quite have it yet,
right?
But
it'll be coming.
At some point it'll come.
Okay, let's go through this again.
Any Dune announcements?
What's interesting about this next expansion is,
again, the word expansion here is used by Paul Dennen. This next expansion. So what does expansion mean exactly? Does that indicate that it's not a standalone game in the way Uprising is? There's different ideas about, is Uprising an expansion? Is it a standalone sequel? Is it a standalone expansion? Direwolf has kind of used both. I think officially they do call it an expansion now, even though it's really not an expansion. It's its own game. So this is kind of ambiguous. It still could be either one. If it's going to be based on the new Dune movie, it sort of feels like it would make sense for it to be a new standalone game. But if it's coming to digital, does that make as much sense? Let's keep going.
Is that digital players are going to be able to play it first.
Oh.
Because we're going to launch it to digital, and it's going to help us kind of balance and
cool.
finalize it.
This is exactly what I was hoping they would do. They're using digital as a way to balance and finalize the game before they release it. And this next part,
because it's kind of so complex that the extra data that we're going to get from the community will help balance the expansion.
It's so complex is a very interesting thing, and this is new information. So that first idea I had it from the Dice Tower video, that it might be just like a minimal thing, a few more cards, a few extra leaders, some cosmetics. No, this is an expansion, and it's so complex that they need us. They need us to help them test it before they put it out into the world. So this is very fascinating. Once again, it could be its own standalone thing. That would be very complex. Or it could be going into the original game. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting, right? With Bloodlines, it was basically an expansion for Uprising, but it was also marketed, and I guess partially at least designed to be compatible with the original game. And it is compatible, or about 66% of it is compatible with the original game. What are they going to do with the next expansion has been my thought as well. Are they going to continue along this path of trying to put out expansions for both original Dune Imperium and Uprising at the same time? Well, currently in digital, there is no Uprising. So it's going to have to either be standalone, or it's going to have to work with the original game. And I assume they wouldn't put out a new expansion that is not compatible with Uprising at this point. So it leads me to think that it's probably going to be compatible with both.
And eventually we'll have Uprising too.
So, and this is also important information. Now, this has been mentioned by Direwolf kind of in their Discord, like a couple of times over the past couple of years, that like at some point they hope to release everything digitally, including Uprising and Bloodlines. But there's been no word at all on that in quite a while. And so we weren't necessarily sure, is this still happening? Well, Paul Dennen confirms it will happen. And the interesting thing here is it really sounds like this other thing is happening first. I would have definitely expected that the next major thing to come to Dune Imperium Digital would be Uprising. I think that's what everyone assumed. I thought maybe they'll bring out like the promo cards, and I hope they do bring out the promo cards sometime, by the way. It'd be nice to have those. But the idea that we're getting a new expansion that's never been seen by anybody before we get Uprising is pretty awesome. So this is what we've got. This is pretty much the bulk of it.
Doesn't quite have it yet,
Right.
but
It'll be coming.
at some point it will come.
All right, after this, there's one small little update, something I dug up on the Steam forums when I was nosing around there the other day. This is from November 13th. And somebody had made a post just kind of asking, like, I'm not sure about this game. Is it full of FOMO? And are there any expansions coming? And Direwolf responded in the Steam thread saying, we can confirm there is no FOMO on Arrakis. And regarding future expansions, rest assured that our team is hard at work on new content for Dune Imperium Digital. We're not quite ready to talk about it just yet, but there is more to come. So there you go. This is all that we have so far. So just to kind of speculate a little bit more, that first announcement said this year. Like, that's soon. That's like within a month of this video coming out, essentially. Now, that was the first thing, and there's been nothing after that in all of those Reddit posts or the subsequent video or this Steam forum post to indicate that that is still on. So I would not be surprised at all if that doesn't happen. But, you know, we have no idea. We could end up with a surprise announcement like in a matter of weeks for all we know, which is pretty exciting. And as for the timing, if we look at the release timing for Dune Imperium products, let's take a look at it. Dune Imperium, the original, was released December 2020. Rise of Ix came out January 2022. So that was like a 2-year gap between the original game and the expansion, which kind of makes sense. Like, they didn't know what kind of hit they had on their hands, I don't think, when they first released it. But after that, it's pretty much been a yearly schedule. Immortality came out a little less than a year after Rise of Ix, December 2022. Uprising came out about a year after that, November 2023, and Bloodlines came out a little over a year after that, January 2025. And so as I'm recording this, it is now November 2025. So we're almost up to a year from Bloodlines, and it seems like we're due. It seems like we're due for something pretty soon. And if they want to release it, this is the physical releases I'm talking about, by the way. So if they want to release something physically about a year after Bloodlines, and they want to test it on digital first, then it would make sense for it to be coming out in the next month or so. Again, I don't necessarily expect that, but it would be consistent if that timeline is going to stay 1 year between games. All right, and now just some final thoughts on this. I think this is super, super exciting. First of all, I primarily play digitally just because that's what I can stream and that's what I can do at any time. As we all know, as board game lovers, it can be hard to get people over to play a board game, although I do that when I can. But this idea of releasing it digitally first to balance it, to test it, and then being able to patch it before you actually print the things out is just so amazing, so brilliant, so genius. This is them really taking advantage of their resources, because when you print a board game, you can't really patch it after that. You know, if you realize a card is too good, or, you know, something is not good enough, or there's a weird interaction you didn't think of, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you can try to do that, like some games do, you know, card games like Magic, for example, they release a ban list or errata or whatever, but it's very awkward, especially with a board game. People don't expect that kind of thing. It's like you get what's in the box and that's what you have. And unfortunately, that has led to some kind of, let's say, mistakes in terms of cards that have been released. Most notably, Tleilaxu Master from Immortality is just like a ridiculous card that it's hard to imagine got through testing. But, you know, I don't know how many people are testing these games before they print them. It's a relatively small group, I imagine. And when you release something to the world, when thousands of players are playing something, then you discover things that you didn't realize. And so maybe if they had released Immortality digitally first, if digital had existed at that time, maybe they would have caught that, and maybe they would have made some adjustments to Tleilaxu Master. This is going to let them tweak any new leaders. Is there a leader that's maybe a little bit too good, or a leader that's struggling just a little bit? Or in the context of this situation, is this leader doing something we don't like or not interesting enough? They can experiment with it before printing it, and I just think this is incredible. Of course, we can all think of other examples of cards, like maybe In the Shadows would fall into this category. But Tleilaxu Master is definitely the big one. And I haven't played enough Uprising to know, but I've certainly heard the term Guild Spy a lot. I don't know exactly what that does, but it seems to me that people have some opinions about that card as well. So this is super great. And just again, as someone who streams Dune Imperium Digital, I am also very personally excited to be able to actually be one of the first people to try out the new Dune Imperium content and be a part also of giving feedback and helping maybe shape it a little bit to make it just as good as it can possibly be when it comes out. So that's it. Let me know in the comments here what you think of this. What do you think it's going to be? What do you hope it's going to be? What do you want? And, we'll see you again very soon. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/bludgeon. You can watch me play Dune Imperium Digital live on Twitch, on YouTube every Sunday morning Eastern time. And stay tuned. Next month, I'll have a Dune Imperium tournament coming out that I will be hosting on the channel called the Bludge Bowl Classic. You can also join my Discord to chat with other Dune Imperium fans, join in games with me on stream, ask questions, and hang out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Take care. Bye.